cough drop. Hopefully not too annoyingly. Anyways, it's going to be a whisper ramble about all of the jobs I have had in my lifetime. I was just trying to think of things to ramble about. You may not be interested in this at all, and that's okay. I just love whisper rambles. They're my favorite kind of ASMR to listen to. And I can be listening to somebody for the first time, and if they have a good whisper ramble voice, I'll listen to them tell me anything about themselves they want to. So, I don't know. I just thought this might be fun. But before we get started with the whisper ramble, if you wouldn't mind to please subscribe to this channel if you have not already, I would appreciate it so much. And if you could leave a comment down below, that would help me out tremendously as well. Today's question of the day is, what is the best job that you have ever had? I'll tell you mine in a little bit as I go through this list. But before that, lastly, if you wouldn't mind to please give this video a thumbs up. I would appreciate it so much. It really helps me out. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I would love that. My handle over on Instagram is just the same as YouTube. It is Cherished, ASMR. Alright. So, let's get started. I'm going to start with the first job I ever had and go up to the most recent job I've had. And I won't tell you like everything about every job because that would take forever, but I'll tell you a little bit about each job. So the first job I had, like many young teenagers, was babysitting. So I grew up in a very small rural area, and the couple who were my youth leaders at my church, they had 3 children, and we lived right across the street from them, and so they would pay me to come babysit their kids while they would go on date nights on the weekends. Looking back now, like then, I thought I was so big. I was in 7th grade, and I thought I was so big because they would let me keep their 3 kids by myself, which is a big deal. But looking back now, I realize, number one, I realized they like overpaid me. Like they were very generous in what they would pay me. And then number 2, I realized that they probably only allowed that because they knew my mom was across the street. My mommy and dad were across the street in our house. But at the time, I felt really big. So that was a fun first way to earn money by babysitting. And it's funny because one of their kids who I babysat is only 3 years younger than me. But when you're in 7th grade and they're in 4th grade, that feels like such a huge difference, I guess. Actually, I babysat 3 kids over there, and it was, their oldest daughter was the same age as one of my brothers, and then their middle child, who was a girl, was the same age as my other brother, and then their youngest child was a little boy, and he was little at the time. He wasn't a baby, he wasn't in diapers, he was out of diapers, so he probably wasn't a toddler, he was probably like in kindergarten, something like that. Anyways, that was a fun little job. They're like the nicest people ever. I love them. My second like some of the packets and things like that. So it was like a fun, easy job. It was before like every preschool had a cricket and all those things. I don't even know if crickets were a thing then. So it was like a lot of I just really what I remember about that job. I mean, I was maybe 15, and really what I remember about that job was cutting out a lot of stuff out of construction paper, which works out. I enjoy monotonous work like that sometimes. I did then. The next job I had after I turned 16, so like my first real job where like it wasn't through a program and it wasn't just through like families in my town letting me babysit for them, was I was a server at a little local restaurant. That was fun. I enjoyed it. There were only 9 tables in the restaurant, and usually there were 2 to 3 waitresses. So it stayed busy there because it was a small town and it was like a really good place to eat at like decent prices. But with only 9 tables and 3 servers, it wasn't like a hard job, especially when I was 16, 17 and in great shape. The next job that I had was working at a dollar store. I worked at a dollar store. It was really fun. I loved that job when I was in high school. I loved working at the dollar store. I was a cashier, and then I would also, like, in between times of checking people out, I would stock shelves, and then, of course, after you close, we would do the things like sweeping and mopping the floors and the side jobs, cleaning the bathrooms. So that was a good job. And then, so those were my junior high and high school jobs. And then when I went to college, my first year, I had the privilege of working in the president's office, which was a really cool opportunity. I got to work with the president of the college. I mean, I was a student worker, so I wasn't like working closely with the president of the college, but I worked in his office. I did a lot of like paper shredding, and what else? One of my tasks was to go through the newspaper like every day. And this was like back, when print media was a little more alive. I would go through, and one of my jobs was to go through the newspapers and clip out anything I saw about the college that I was at, or the president, or the regents, or the foundation, like trustees, things like that. So I did that, and then I would scrapbook those things. I had to water the plants. Funnily enough, that was the hardest job for me in that job, because I never watered plants. Like, I've never been good at keeping plants alive. And so I think I probably killed a lot of plants in there. And I think that the other ladies who worked in there were probably very well aware of that. But they're very kind about it. But I think I overwatered them sometimes. I would clean the office. Like, if I remember correctly, I would be the last one there. And so I would, like, on one day a week or something, and so I would, like, clean the office, which was mostly just, like, cleaning surfaces. I don't remember having to vacuum or anything, but just, like, cleaning the desk surfaces and stuff. Just basically things that a student worker would do, but in the president's office. I would have gotten to work in the president's office for the full 2 years, but I ended up leaving after my freshman year because I wanted to work at a church camp that summer, and the student worker in the president's office had to work the summer too, and so it was basically like if I left, I wouldn't be able to come back my sophomore year, and I was okay with that. I was like, I'll get a job somewhere else. So anyways, but to back up a little bit, while I was working in the president's office that freshman year, I also was a server in that same town at like a local, I think it was a chain. It's a chain, but it was like a regional chain, so I don't want to say the name out loud, but server there at the same time. So I would do that in the evenings and then go to class during the day. And then, like, in between classes was when I worked in the president's office. That was a busy time in my life. But I really loved being a server. Like, if my body was in better health now, I mean, not now with having a kid and stuff, but that's a job, like, I wouldn't mind to do now. I liked serving. So again, I left my job at the president's office in Western Sislin and worked at a church camp that summer. Now, in saying that, at this church camp, working there, it was not like being a camp counselor. No. You were a staffer. So, like, that means some nights you work the concession stand in days. Some days you work the gift shop. Some days you're mowing. Some days you're weed eating. Some days you're on trash duty. Like, they had their own trash truck. And we would ride the trash truck to be like the trash people that threw the trash into the truck. Some days you're like on maintenance duty. What else? There were some weeks where my friend, who was my roommate at the camp too, and she and I went to college together too. There were some weeks we would be in charge of like teaching little pre-K kids, which that was probably like my favorite part because that was like the easiest job, you know, like you're in with an air conditioner and not out mowing. I'm trying to remember what else. There were all kinds of jobs. It was not an easy job. Like, it was a hard job. It was probably the most physically taxing job I've ever done. But it was so much fun. Like, what a great summer. I think most, if not all, of the people who worked with me that summer went back in future summers to work there. I never went back again. I just did the one summer. But I'm glad I did it. And then after I came back from that camp and went back to college for my sophomore year, I worked at Walmart, which was an okay job. It was not my favorite. While I was working at Walmart and while I was a sophomore in college, I was also a resident assistant. The responsibilities to be a resident assistant at that college were not nearly as demanding as my next job, which was my junior year of college. I was a resident assistant at the 4-year university I went to that I transferred to. And so I became a resident assistant there my junior and senior years, and it wasn't a hard job. It was a really fun job. There was more involved in it because you had to like do rounds when it was your duty. You had to work the front desk in your dorm building. You had to do programming, like you had to create programs for your, like, based on certain topics or themes for your hall. So all kinds of stuff like that. It was super fun, but it was a lot. So I did that, and while I was an RA at the 4-year university, I also worked in a computer lab at the university, which was also just super easy. Like, basically, you were just in the computer lab, and if anybody had any questions, it was just kind of monitoring. And you know, if anybody had trouble with the computers, you like turn it off and back on, and it usually worked. Also, I forgot to write this down, but in between there, like the summer between my junior and senior years of college, the summer between my junior and senior years, I worked at a different dollar store chain, which also loved. So fun. Sorry, making sure my mic is still on. I guess I could see it in the screen if I looked. Okay. So then I graduated from college, and before I graduated from college, I was offered a full-time job in another state from where I was as a residence hall director, and I originally accepted were so kind to me, and it was like a family-owned print shop. It was like a chain, but it was family-owned. Anyways, like, I just didn't like it. I was not good at it, and I have a really bad habit. I don't know if it's a habit, but a really bad quality that if I'm not good at something right away, I don't like it. And I'm not good at working at it, I guess, for something like that. Also, I just wasn't interested in it. Like, I can remember I would be like cutting business cards, and you'd have like the huge slicer, whatever it's called, the huge cutter. And I like messed up a whole order of business cards one time. And I can remember I would just go to the bathroom and cry and cry and cry because even more so then, like I still am, but even more so then, I was such a perfectionist. To not be good at something like that was like really devastating for me. So anyways, I did something really bad, and two jobs in my life have I done something like this at, and I am not proud of it, and I would never ever put these jobs on my resume or use them as references. Like, never, ever, ever, ever. I can't even believe I'm sharing this on the internet. But we've all done things we regret, right? And I was 22 years old. I was young. I was dumb. I left to go on my lunch break one day, and I went home and I wrote an email to them. Like, what a coward. I wrote an email and told them, like, we all know I'm not good at this. I'm just not going to come back. I'm so sorry. Like, wrote this really long email. I can't remember if they ever responded, but yeah, it's embarrassing that I ever did that. And I don't think I would recognize anybody that I worked with if I ever ran into them. And I don't think they would recognize me. But I still feel bad about that to this day when I think about it. The other job that I did that too, like, did something similar. I'll tell you about it in a sec. I don't feel guilty about that one. But this one, I feel really bad because they were really nice to me. Anyway, so yeah, I worked at a print shop. That was like my first big girl job out of college, or out of university. But after that, I got a great job that I loved. The only problem was it was part-time, and I was living in a really expensive area, so part-time didn't cut it, so I had to get a second part-time job. So the first part-time job I got was at a college as a job placement specialist in their job placement office. And having that job, I feel like really started the trajectory of my career in higher ed. So like, whenever people ask me what my professional experience has mostly been in, the answer is higher education, because that's where I've spent the most time working. That's where I consider myself, that's what I consider myself a professional in. So anyways, I got that job, and then I also worked at a bookstore part-time. Again, the part-time just wasn't cutting it, like even 2 part-time jobs. It was really hard, and so both jobs, well, the bookstore one I didn't keep for that long, but the job placement job, like, my boss and everybody around was well aware. Like, I kept them in the loop that I was still looking for other jobs because I needed something full-time, and there wasn't really a chance of anything coming open full-time in that office or in that school, because I can't remember if there was like a hiring freeze at the time or what. You gotta keep in mind too, like, I graduated from university in 2009. So like right after the recession. So there were not a lot of jobs to be had, and there were hiring freezes. It was a rough time. So anyway, after that, I got a job at a private university as a secretary, and you can only imagine the entitlement I felt about that, which is so dumb. Like, I just wish I could go back and slap my younger self so many times. I say secretary, my title was administrative assistant, and then I ended up getting promoted to an enrollment counselor position, but I didn't stay there for very long It was just a lot of different things. So when I moved back in with my family, I got a job at the college where I had gone, actually, that I had attended as a student. I got a job there as my title was activity director for a specific grant. I don't want to say the grant, but my title was activity director. That was a really fun job. It was probably one of the better jobs. It was probably the best professional job I'd had up to that point. And then at that same college, I ended up like moving laterally to a different position as the career center coordinator. So I say it was lateral. I guess maybe in paycheck it was lateral, but in title, I guess that's still lateral at that college because I went from activity director to career center coordinator. So yeah, it was a lateral move, and I was like a career center coordinator / academic advisor, and I feel like at that point, because I didn't exactly know very much about career services and stuff, I focused more on the academic advisor side of it, which I probably shouldn't have, but I really loved that job. It was a good job. And it was while I was working there that I met my now husband, and we got together. He actually lived far away. We did long distance dating. I don't know if I've ever told like our love story on here. I'll have to tell that sometime. It's a good one. So anyways, after my husband and I got married, we ended up moving a couple of hours away for his new job. So I had to leave my job at the college. So that was sad for me because I really loved it there and I loved the people. So that was sad and hard. If we ever end up back in that area, like I would be happy to work there and retire from there. It was a great job. I will say working in higher ed, if you're not faculty or like a VP or something, it doesn't pay super well. Anyways, so we moved a couple of hours away from my husband's job, which was great. I was happy to do that. We decided when we first got married, like I was able to stay home and keep our house and do those things, which looking back now, it was nice because I was always there for my husband. I wasn't exhausted at the end of the day and all those things. But looking back now, like there's a part of me that wishes I would have worked to save a lot of money. You know, like we were able to live on his paycheck, but should we have, like, we could have saved if I had worked too, but that's okay. But then eventually we did decide for me to go back to work, and I was applying to a lot of different types of jobs at the time, and I knew I was like applying for higher ed jobs, but in the meantime, I got offered and accepted a job at a collections agency. Oh my goodness. Of all the jobs I've ever had, like probably my least favorite. Like looking at this list, yeah, I think that was my least favorite job ever. Oh my gosh. I was pretty decent at it, actually, shockingly, because I followed the rules, basically. But I feel like they would hire anybody just walking in off the street. And it was not fun, you know, like you get cussed out every day. It was very financially driven. They're like, if you stay here for however long, you can make bukus and bukus of money eventually, like your commissions off of the money you collect, da-da-da-da. I am not, like, something about me is I am not money driven. Like, I am not a high maintenance bougie gal. I am not driven by finances or by money. Like, of course, money is nice to have. You gotta eat, you gotta live. Some things are nice to have, but like, to me, just getting my nails done lately. Oh, I look like Christmas with my red and green. But anyways, like, just getting one day I tried to quit. Like, I went and I talked to the boss, like face to face, and just told him, like, I would like to put in my 2 weeks. I don't think this is for me. And he would not let me. He was like, I want you to just give it a little bit more time before you decide. Like, you're doing really good at this. And I was like, okay. And looking back now, like, this was close to 10 years ago. Not quite 10 years ago, but close, maybe 9 years ago, maybe 10. I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago. Between 8 and 10 years ago. Anyways, like, I would be better at advocating for myself now and just being like, no, thank you, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm sure that this isn't for me, because these are not people that I'm going to use as references for the jobs that I'm doing. This is not a job I'm gonna write on my resume. Like, it was just something to make money in the in-between. So anyways, and this is the one that I did a bad thing, and again, I felt really bad about the quick print one, but this one I didn't really feel that bad about. So he wouldn't let me quit, and this place was like intense about, like, you could not have your phone in the building. It was crazy. So I grabbed all my stuff, and I had, like, the person that I worked with, like, be lookout for me, and I grabbed my stuff and I walked out, like, the back stairs that were away from the boss, so he couldn't see me leaving, and I just didn't come back. Again, not proud of that. I hope none of my future employers are watching this, because that was years ago me, and I wouldn't do that now, especially not with a job that I cared about. But if we're being honest, I just didn't care about that job. Was not what I wanted to do with my life. So after that, I started, I wasn't really looking for a job. Well, no, that's not true. I think I was looking at colleges for jobs then. And I'd, like, that's what it was. I had put in several applications, but I hadn't heard anything. And so the leasing agents at the apartment, and, like, the apartment manager at the apartments where my husband and I lived, told me about a leasing agent position that was open at, like, a sister property. And so I went in for the interview and was offered the job, but again, it was part-time. It was super fun. I really enjoyed it. Like, it was creepy sometimes, and I feel like it's not a super safe, like, in some areas it's fine, but, like, in that area it was not a safe. Looking back now, anyways, it was still a fun job. I enjoyed it. But while I was working there, I did feel really bad about this one, because I had assumed that I didn't get any of the higher ed jobs I applied for when I took that. And so once I took the leasing agent job, I stopped looking for anything else. And then the application I had put in at a university for a career counselor position, they ended up calling me, and I had put that application in, like, before the leasing agent position, and I got an interview, and I ended up getting the job. And obviously that was, like, in my realm of, like, professional expertise, and so I went with that. So I was a career counselor at a university, and I would say, of all the jobs I've had so far, that was probably my favorite job. I loved it. So what I did as a career counselor was I edited students' resumes. That's probably what I spent the majority of my time on. To this day, I love to edit a resume. I edited a lot of students' resumes. I conducted mock interviews with students. Didn't do that one quite as often, I think, because people would just get nervous about scheduling that. And these are for students of the university. These services were free to students of the university and alumni of the university. I did, mock interviews, edited resumes, helped with career fairs, like, helped with the setup and all of that. responsible for maintaining relationships with employers in our area. And I worked on, we had side projects, like each employee of the office had side projects. And one of my side projects was like finding businesses that would be willing to take on like interns, but unpaid. It wasn't called interns, basically like job shadowing. I gave a lot of presentations in classes about the services we offered. Also, I always had ready, like each year, ready a presentation over resumes, a presentation over interviewing. So that way, if a professor called and said, hey, could you come give a presentation about this, I would have it prepared. And then I just helped with like career events. So it was a super fun job. I loved it. I am a cheesy person. This is really long, by the way. Sorry. I am a cheesy person who loves to see people's dreams come true. And if I get to be a tiny part of that, like, that's awesome. So that was my favorite job so far. And then again, we moved for my husband because he got a new job, like a better job. And so we moved a couple of hours away. And when we came, and that's where we live now, is where we moved to. And we moved here 7 years ago. And so I actually got a job as a secretary. Again, I was a registrar secretary at a tech school, which was an okay job. It was a bad time in my life. Like, I was having a lot of mental and physical health problems. And so it was just a really bad time in my life. I had a negative attitude. Anyways, I wish I could go back and change that, but you can't go back. But it was a decent job. It wasn't my favorite job ever. It wasn't my least favorite job ever. I think if I had been in a better place mentally, I would have liked it more. And then recently I worked just for a short term as the interim children's ministry assistant at our church. That was a fun job, but kind of like an all-consuming job, and it just ended up not working out. I got along with everybody. I got along with my supervisor. I got along with everybody there. I just, we had a lot of things going on in our families at the time, and my son was getting sick a lot, and yeah, it just all, there were just so many different factors, and so, and plus it was always going to be temporary. It was part-time temporary, and now I've been offered a new job, which I told you guys in my last Whisper Ramble. I am going to be a special education teacher online, so I am super nervous and super excited. It's definitely a new journey. As you can tell, I've never really taught, so I am super excited, super nervous, would appreciate your prayers. I think it'll go well, but we'll see. I'm sure it's going to be overwhelming for a while, but I'm super excited. So this is super long. I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I am going to bed. It is probably after 1 a.m. now. It's storming where I am, and I am sleepy, and I have a little guy, a 4-year-old, who will certainly not sleep past 6:30 or 7 tomorrow. So I will need to take care of him. But as always, thank you so much for being here and watching and listening. I am truly so grateful that you chose to come spend some time here with me. I hope you found some rest and relaxation in this video, and I really hope that your